If all else fails, you can try turning me up on Skype.
Yeah, that's getting a little more hiss in it again. Or whatever you just did. I'm not sure what you just did, but...
I literally did nothing. I just started up Dawn of War 2. My mic might be on its way out, honestly. It's really old.
Yeah, it just sounds like a not very good mic, honestly, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I just bought this Steel Series very, suddenly.
Mm.
Yeah, I honestly think it's just gonna die. So I should buy a new one.
Alrighty. Well, we are live for that mic test whenever anyone wants to listen in.
Yeah,
Let us know how
mic
it's
test.
going. Mic test.
I don't know what all
Anything?
the stack is, though. Wanna close the window? Yep. Is that somehow better?
It is much better, actually. Yeah, what did you
Much
do?
better. It was the wind. What the? Okay. And I boosted my mic volume. Is that still, like, staticky?
No, it sounds fine to me. I mean, there's like a very little amount of like something, but it's not bad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How's that mic test going? I should,
Yeah, we should be hopefully hearing from someone about that soon, maybe.
why can I not mute Google Chrome anymore in my sound mixer? That's slightly weird.
I don't know.
I'm trying to mute Google Chrome specifically so the Ustream ad doesn't deafen me. Just, oh, I got it. I wonder if there's a way to pause the ad. So I could just look in the. But I can do pop-out chat, right?
Uh, oh yeah, if that's there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, there's a
There
button
is
for it.
Yep, there we go. Got it. Found it. Boom. That is exactly what I wanted. Alright, so I'm assuming that our mics are fine because no one has popped up to say that our mics are not good. So, thus, that assumes they are good. Alright.
I was able to listen into myself before the ad kicked in. I was pretty loud, so I turned down my mic a little bit.
Alright, yeah, you're a little loud again. Just turn it down slightly, a little more. And I think we should be good.
Alright, I gotta get the control panel.
In the meantime, I'm going to get this cast going, alright? Because it is 5:30 p.m., time for Dawn of War 2 Daily. Alright everyone, hello and welcome today. Our focus on Dawn of War 2 Daily number 3 is going to be on Requisition income, how you get it, what to do with it, and what impacts it, and basically what impacts it has on the game. Economy is actually really huge in Dawn of War 2, despite how much emphasis there is on combat. So it's one of those things that gets really overlooked compared to a game like StarCraft or StarCraft 2 or Supreme Commander, any other RTS per se, that has a lot, much more visible macro. Dawn of War 2's macro in some ways is kind of hidden because it's so performance based, that a lot of people just kind of miss the subtleties of it, especially like upkeep, requisition point maturation, and attrition as well are some of the big ones that we're going to go over today.
And also, one reason why people sometimes overlook it is because sometimes units fighting will be capping the map or run back to cap a map, and honestly, people just think that's part of micro, but it's and because there's no base building, but really anything relating to the resources, model losses, capping, all of that is part of the macro element of the game that we're going to try to explore today.
I mean, we kind of said this in the past, but we haven't. I don't think we've quite stated it this way, but I'm gonna state it this way today, and this is basically the way I'm gonna keep going with it from here on out. Is that all of your units have the potential? Well, all of your non-vehicles pretty much have the potential to be workers. They are workers whenever they are capturing a point of any kind. That includes a victory point, by the way, but we're not going to focus on that too much today. But in my opinion, victory points are also resources. Nonetheless, though, so not using your quote workers efficiently as far as capping goes, and how you use them and stuff. That all actually relates back into macro. And again, there's a significant macro component to Dawn of War 2. We're going to delve into the requisition portion of that today. We will look to be delving into the power portion of that later on. But so let's go ahead and hop in. We've got a replay here between CC13 and Aki. CC13 in this replay played Warlock Eldar, and Aki played, I believe, Apothecary Space Marines. This was another game from the ESL tournament, obviously in an earlier round than the finals. We're not only going to be casting games from there, but this was a game from there that we really liked. It showcased some of the things that we want to talk about. So we're going to go ahead and boot right into this. We're going to get right up to the 5-second mark, sync up, and get going.
And Aki is playing Space Marines, if you guys remember back in beta when we had that show match. We were under the assumption Aki would also play Space Marines, but instead he played a different race. 2 different races, I believe, in that show match.
Or the show match, I think, the show match on Friday, right?
Yeah, Aki versus Zoom.
Yeah, that was Friday. So long ago now.
No, the whole weekend.
Yeah, we had assumed Aki would, we were kind of hoping he would play Space Marines, but he wasn't confident enough in his Space Marines against Tyranids, apparently. But we do see here he is playing Space Marines. This usually is what we expect to see Aki play in Oz, so we're going to be very interested to see what he does here. Let's get this.
Oh, and a quick mention, though, because some of our viewers might not know what the heroes do. Aki is playing the Apothecary, who is basically like a combat medic. His war gear allows him to... He has a basic heal ability, and his war gear will boost that up or boost his damage or give him other abilities like mana drain or life drain. And then the Warlock is an offensive spellcaster in that he has... His starting ability is Destructor, which is a basically Force Lightning, which does significant AoE damage, and then he can be upgraded with spears that do more damage. He leaps into combat. He's pretty good in melee combat as well. A little bit squishy at first.
He has quite good specials, especially when you special attacks. We'll try to clarify a lot of this stuff as we're going. What we kind of want to try and do with a lot of this stuff, though, is rather than clarify everything in one day, we want to try and have little things where we go ahead and clarify each individual aspect as much as we can. So today we're going to focus on Requisition. But there you go, a little bit of an explanation of the heroes. And we good to go now?
Yep.
Alright, we are good to go. So in 5 seconds, we're going to get this replay booted up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, so on the left side we do have that Warlock, as Lokgar mentioned, and the right side we have the Apothecary. So Aki has the Apothecary. Now the Warlock, interestingly here, is going straight for the power node in the middle of the map. So we're going to see that CC13 is going to focus on power first, actually, rather than Requisition. He did not go for his natural Requisition node here.
And we saw that yesterday in both games on Greentooth Gorge. Edja also went for the both powers before he even went for his Requisition, which will allow these players to get those initial upgrades or those initial 30 power shurikens or rangers up faster.
And in the meantime, we're also seeing that CC13 is putting a node on both, fortification on both power nodes, actually. So that's going to allow him to secure those nodes and lock them down. It's going to make it much harder for Aki to take them back, to ninja cap them or anything. And it's also going to give CC13 a little bit of income. But remember, though, it is more efficient to put generators on top of a fortified node than it is to put nodes up all over the place. But nodes do go up faster if you don't have a node up already.
Also, just the extra health is pretty handy if say a key sends a squad to ninja cap it and forgets he sent it, or just doesn't notice that it's secured. The units will basically just be sitting there shooting, wasting time when they could be capping other points.
Yeah. So we do see that CC13 is doing a pretty good job of map control in the early game here. Aki is playing somewhat defensively. He's trying to hold his gem farm here, but he is backing up a little bit. These Banshees are really going quite aggressively towards this gem farm. Looks like CC13 is pulling out a ranger. He wants to get an aggressive gem bash, because it did seem that Aki might have been going for that center power point as well with his scouts, but that initial fleet of foot from the Warlock allowed him to get there just a little bit quicker. And so it seems like CC13 probably wants to deny power to Aki, and in the meantime he wants to get power for himself here, and we saw again the Ranger was one of the reasons why he wanted to do that.
And a lot of players do like to go for an early gen bash against Space Marines, I've noticed, but in my honest opinion it's very much more important to deny them Requisition. Right now Aki hasn't really capped any of the other Requisition points either, so that isn't too much of a bad decision, but if Aki was actively going after those Requisition points, for a Space Marine, Requisition in the early game is much more important. Just because reinforcement costs and scouts and such are all just Requisition.
Yeah, so it is worthwhile noting that we can talk a little bit at the moment about just kind of the relationship of Requisition on the whole, how it's earned, and how the points play into it and stuff. So basically, how Requisition is earned, your basic Requisition income is from your, quote, base or whatever. It's just your constant income of, I believe, 264 Requisition per minute. That never actually changes, even though you will see when we go back to the economic view here, we see this like little plus figure here, like plus, and then this yellow figure. What this is indicating actually is the amount of Requisition that you earn minus whatever upkeep you're paying. So upkeep is dependent somewhat on population. So the reason why upkeep is dependent on population is it's kind of a little arbitrary, because technically units cost upkeep, and then that upkeep is taken out of your Requisition income on a per second basis, basically. So even though you only get the per minute figures. So I know we have combat going on the screen, guys, but this is not our big focus today. We will get to that. And we are seeing that CC13 is doing a pretty good job of leading those Assault Space Marines. And we'll get into attrition in a little bit. There's some great examples of that later on. But for now, we just want to go ahead and focus on the basics of the Requisition economy. But I will point out that this kind of little bleed here of these tax being taken down, these models going down and stuff. This is why Lokgar was saying that Requisition is much more important for Space Marines early on. Although we did see that Aki focused on power so that he could get his Assault Space Marines out just a little faster. But going back to what I was saying about Requisition income is that it is based on your initial income, and then you have upkeep on top of it. So that upkeep is already taken out of the figure that you see in game that I'm kind of mousing over right now. So then the other factors to that figure then are that you kind of have to consider the additive components of that are, as you can see, a little like plus 10 here. And actually, let's focus on this shortly, because we have plus 10 over this Requisition node, and then we have plus 30 over this Requisition node. And now all of a sudden this node is plus 15 Requisition instead of plus 10. What's actually happening to this node, we're just going to focus on this and watch it for a short bit. This Requisition node is maturing. When you initially capture Requisition nodes, they only give you about, they give you 10 Requisition, plus 10 Requisition. So that adds 10 Requisition to your base income. So if your base income is 264, it would then be 274 before taking out upkeep and stuff. So as we continue to look at this, we see that it is continuing to go up and up and up, and it will go up until it reaches 30. So the longer you hold a node, the more income you're getting. And so what this means in the long term as well is that there is a form of harassment you can do, which is called ninja, which is like ninja capping, just decapping in general, where if you go up and let's say that Aki were to capture this Requisition point right now, right? This would go back to 0, and then if he captured it for himself, it would start at 10 and it would start maturing in his favor. If he just decaptured it, it would go back and he would force CC13 to recapture, and then it would start at 10 again. So it actually slows the rate at which your opponent gets requisition, even if they get it back immediately. Alright, so coming up here, we're about ready to pause really quickly. Well, actually, not quite yet. We're going to wait right for when the Tier 2 research goes down. So I'm going to let Lokgar talk until then.
Alright, one other thing that you were mentioning was it's much better to decap, even if they recap it immediately, and I completely agree with that. Nice nade, though. I just had to point that out. But yeah, that is really handy. Also, you lose the line of sight if you have a point captured. You get a little bit of line of sight.
5,
so you can
4,
really play
3, 2, 1, pause. Alright, go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Alright, you can really play mind games, because an enemy might see a certain type of unit capturing a requisition point, say a very expensive unit. He might send forces to try to divert it, but as soon as you decap it, you just leave, and now the enemy doesn't know where that troop is, and you hurt his economy. And really, playing mind games with enemies' requisition points is usually a good idea.
Yeah, and I guess it also, like, kind of going in what you just said there, requisition points, any kind of point that you capture gives you just a little bit of line of sight, so it's always kind of some nice stuff going on there. So the reason why we pause this now, let's go ahead and explain this, is we have a bit of an error on CC13's part, and this goes a little beyond requisition, because which is our primary focus, but we are talking about kind of the broader macro mechanics as well. And one of the key macro mechanics of Dawn of War 2 is the tier system, right? You have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Pretty basic. You can also add tier 1, quote tier 1.5 and stuff in there. For those of you who don't know, tier 1.5 is basically anything that's in tier 1 that costs power. The primary intent of quote tier 1.5's existence is to separate out those things that you can get immediately, particularly since you start with 500 requisition at the beginning. Versus those things that you cannot get immediately. But anyway, so what's happening here, though, is Tier 2 is kind of one of those things you have to invest in Tier 2 at some point in time. If your opponent goes Tier 2. Now, I mean, if neither player goes Tier 2 and you get in a game of chicken, okay, that's generally an exception. But if your opponent is going to invest in Tier 2, and most players at some point in the game will, the threat of vehicles is ever present. And basically, there are things in Tier 2 that you cannot counter in Tier 1. And you're not supposed to be able to counter them in Tier 1. Dawn of War 2 is a real-time strategy game. As mentioned, there is a macro component. The requisition that we're going to be talking about today, and that we are talking about today, is a key component of that. So there are a lot of things which you have control over that govern your ability to go to Tier 2. And, these kind of macro rules. I know one of the biggest complaints of newer players sometimes is that they will get destroyed. Their base even will get taken out by units that they can't do anything about because they're still in Tier 1 and their opponent has Tier 2 units, and it's frustrating at first when that happens, but you have to kind of sit back and take another look and say, okay, why was my opponent in Tier 2? Why was I not in Tier 2? What happened? What did he do differently? What could I have done differently? So, I mean, those are somewhat discussions for another time, but at the moment, what we have here is both players are looking to go Tier 2. Neither really wants to get left behind. Both have things in Tier 2 that they're going to want to get, they're going to want to pull out, and they're going to want to make good use of. But again, like I said, CC13 has made an error here. If we look, the cost of going Tier 2 is 300 requisition and 125 power. If we look at Aki's requisition and his power right now, we're not looking at incomes, we're looking at the actual current amount of requisition and power. He has 89 requisition and 3 power on my screen. So, he doesn't, it's very, very low, and he's researching Tier 2. Basically, he hit the button, quite literally, the hotkey or the button on the screen, to go to Tier 2 just about immediately when given the opportunity to do so. So he has basically the tightest possible macro timing to get to Tier 2. What this basically does for him is it makes sure it's just an optimal thing, right? So it takes 75 seconds to get to Tier 2, and those 75 seconds are going to come quicker in the game now because he has done such a good job of staying on top of this particular thing, right? CC13, on the other hand, though, has 683 requisition and 154 power. At the moment, there is absolutely nothing that CC13 can spend 683 requisition on efficiently. And when I say efficiently, I basically mean there's no single unit in tier 1 that he's going to be able to get that requires all of that requisition, right? None of it that requires all of that power. So all of this is just kind of sitting idle right now, right? There's no use for this. Even though maybe something better could be brought to the field, he could be doing something to really crush Aki harder, or he could be teching. As mentioned, there are things in Tier 2 that you cannot counter in Tier 1. If you can get to Tier 2 faster than your opponent, you can oftentimes leverage these things to gain additional map control. Gaining additional map control is going to take a stroll on the map really quickly. As many requisition points, and we're going to get to this in another second because this is another reason why we pause, but as many requisition points as CC13 controls right now, he could even attack the natural requisition point at a bare minimum, decapture that. He could push the generator farm of Aki. He could do a lot of economic damage at this point and solidly control all 3 victory points. If he were to be able to get to Tier 2 ahead and to be able to leverage that advantage, right? Because I mean, he would get there, and especially with the incomes and everything he has now, it would just be a very nice advantage. Instead, what we see has happened is that he's built up all of this requisition, all this power. Instead of being very tight on his timing of going to Tier 2 like Aki was, he's been very loose on his timing. He's been kind of either ignoring it or not paying attention or something along those lines. And now Aki, who was behind him, and actually if you kind of do the math here, we're going to see that actually he was somewhere, I believe, around 28 power behind, it seems to be. So a decent, when you kind of look at the time, it's about 35 seconds behind, which actually is enough time to get a unit out, a Tier 2 unit out, or an upgrade out, and do some amount of damage. So basically we're going to see that whereas had CC13 teched on time, he would have put Aki in a bad position. Aki now is actually teching first, and we are going to see CC13 won't tech very much behind, but it's kind of one of those things where CC13 had a potential advantage that he is not taking advantage of right now. Again, because of this somewhat not very good macro, honestly. Lokgar, do you have any comments on that?
You pretty much nailed it, actually.
With that many words, I hope so.
Walls of text in
verbal format. Alright, so the second thing I said we were going to talk about, the second reason why we pause, is we have been talking about these requisition points. So let's just take a second without other stuff going on, because I know everyone's eyes tend to wander. It's like, oh my gosh, really great, really nice grenade spike, and we do have to applaud really nice grenade spikes because, this game is largely centered on micro. All of these macro mechanics we're talking about today were designed the way that they are in order to support the micromanagement mechanics that the game has. By the way, when we say micro and we say macro, we mean micromanagement. We say macro, we mean macro management. Micromanagement is basically, it's generally almost anything relating to direct battle. Moving your units around, ordering your units to attack, ordering your units to use abilities, ordering your units to dodge, positioning your units behind cover. Long-term strategic micro is a little vaguer, but generally anything that has to do with combat is micro. Macro then is just about anything that has to do with economy. Long-term strategy and force composition intents are macro. So basically, it's almost anything that isn't micro. The two terms are somewhat exclusive. Lokgar, do you want to add anything to those definitions? Or
the amount of focus we're giving on the macro element is also mostly because we feel that many players overlook it, as we said earlier. And really, it's like 5-star / Terran UP 16 said.
Up 16.
Terran up 16.
Yeah, that's fine.
Said that it's really just a mix of it, and right now we're exaggerating it or kind of like giving it the extra focus, but eventually we'll go into more micro tricks that hopefully players can use to win battles as well as just the fight.
Yeah, actually, I was looking at I think the replay we're going to see after this, we will see the kind of a very interesting intertwining of micro and macro, where you can sort of do an interesting macro strategy through your micro performance. But that's kind of another important point, is that, again, like as we were saying, all of the macro in Dawn of War 2 is designed to support its micro. It's designed to support it in such a way that the macro is performance based. So it's your macro income, right, your economy, is going to be based on how well you're doing in combat, generally. There are some extra things that you can do to boost that this way or that. Like, so there are some economic investments you can do, like having squads capture points instead of participating in battle, right? Or you can spend requisition on power nodes instead of spending requisition on squads. Therefore, it's spending stuff on teching as opposed to spending stuff on direct combat units. So now going back to these requisition points and kind of the current state of the game, right, between CC13 and Aki here, we have, we're going to go through, there's the natural requisition point for CC13. Let me go ahead and define the natural point really quickly for you guys. We define the natural point, and in Dawn of War 2 there are two types of natural points. There's a natural requisition point and a natural power node. Basically, we define them as the closest points to a player's player's base, and or the closest ones for the player to hold, easiest ones for the player to hold, which are generally the closest to their base. So in this case, it's the one I'm looking at right now. This is for requisition, would usually be the easiest one to hold. Meanwhile, the easiest power to hold is obviously the one that I'm looking at over here for CC13, because you see you've got nice little cover here, a nice little shelter, and it's right next to the base, which is really important that these points are right, or proximity to base is generally important for these particular points, because it allows the player to reinforce and get back to them and hold them pretty easily. And it also makes it really tough for opponents capping squads to even have reconnaissance of what's enemy squads are in the region. So it makes it dangerous to capture natural requisition and natural power points and stuff as well. So we've got this, and this is a fully mature node for CC13. We then have like 3 middle requisition points here, and this is actually it was interesting watching a replay on Greentooth Jungle earlier as well, and noticed again kind of the same 3 vertical requisition points between the 2 bases, and these are all maps that were put in vanilla Dawn of War 2. Vanilla is of course the original Dawn of War 2 before any expansions. So we actually have 3 of these here, and all 3 of these are fully matured in favor of CC13. So now when we go ahead and we look at CC13's requisition income, he has a total of 350 requisition income per minute. That's a little misleading, because, and the reason why I say it's misleading is that is after upkeep, which I guess we should also probably talk about now while we're paused, because it's another decent sized subject. Sorry guys for giving me the big verbal thing, but you know, we're just combining a radio show with a stream, so we'll get back to the actual stream in a little bit here. But both parts are really important, we feel. So anyway, 350 requisition here, plus 350 requisition per minute. What that actually means is that it's the base income for CC13. As I mentioned, 264 requisition per minute. Nothing ever takes that away. And then you add in all of the points that CC13 owns, so all of these requisition points here that say like plus 30 on them. So here's one plus 30. So that's, here's another plus 30, here's another plus 30, and here's another plus 30. So that's plus 120 requisition from those points. So that would add up to 384 requisition. So plus 384 requisition, and then apparently the difference between that and the 350 shown is that what is shown already factors in upkeep. Quick thing on upkeep is that you don't pay upkeep on 30 population or below. It used to be the Tyranids, I believe, had if it was 20, they actually changed it for a short time to be 26.
I think it was 26, and then they changed it back up to 30 to
with retribution. I don't know if they felt, but because they made a lot of changes to Tyranid Tier 1, so that was actually kind of a stealth buff, because I don't think they ever really clarified that anywhere they put that back up. but don't quote me on that. And or Tasker Thunder send me a message, get angry at me. um, but anyway, so this figure, like I said, is a little misleading because it is after upkeep. Like I said, we'll get to upkeep in a second. So anyway, if we look at the income here that CC13 has, it is a full 56 more requisition per minute than Aki is getting.
Also, I do have to point this out. Aki is only at 29 pop. He's not actually paying requisition yet, and he's only at 294 upkeep. Requisition upkeep.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, so and the reason why Aki is only at 294 here is we see that he has only 1 plus 30 requisition nodes. So we actually do see that all the requisition nodes in the maps right now are matured, which is kind of interesting because it means that, and actually, it's not necessarily interesting. It kind of makes sense because we see that like Aki is retreating a Assault Space Marine squad here that has only 1 out of 3 members left. We're seeing a low health Apothecary retreating. If we swap over to the units tab, we kind of like look around. There was just a big battle, right? So during a big battle, it's pretty common that you're going to pull squads away from capping. You want to win the battle because, you know, capping is important, but at the same time, it costs resources to reinforce and to build new units and stuff. So it's always good to hold and win the battle. And also, when you win the battle, after you win the battle, your opponent retreats out, sits at their base, and does what? You know, they've got to recuperate. They've got to. It takes time to do all of that. That's time that after you win the battle, you have then time to cap, to cap points and stuff. So that's why right now we're kind of seeing all these mature requisition points because a big battle just happened. So there hasn't really been a great chance for ninja capping, but we do see in the bottom portion here we got one little shotgun scout squad that's actually going for a victory point because Aki is bleeding a little hard on there. He's down to 247 versus CC13's 491, and I think just having started tier 2, being down to less than half his victory points is not quite where Aki wants to be right now, so he's trying to fix that first. But yeah, so as mentioned, Aki doesn't really have any upkeep that he's paying right now, and that's one of the reasons why he's even remotely competitive with CC13 for income at the moment. If it weren't for that, and I think actually once we see that Assault Space Marine squad reinforced, that'll be something to watch certainly. Once that happens, he'll be paying upkeep again, and I think the disparity should grow quite a bit. So what this income then allows you to do, what it's going to allow CC13 to do is there's this kind of a concept that I want to call profit versus revenue. So this plus 350 figure here, again, we're going to call revenue, right? Again, a little inaccurate because full revenue would be if we took out the upkeep and then we subtracted the upkeep from, because profit would include or exclude the upkeep. But because this is what the game gives us, we're going to ignore upkeep as far as revenue goes and just kind of factor it into the revenue calculation in that way. So revenue is what we're taking in, right? So we're taking in 350 requisition per minute right now. That's quite a lot, but there is some hidden costs that we have to be aware of. When we lose units, we probably want to replace them, right? So this is kind of again ties back into how Dawn of War 2 is all about combat, right? Or actually, Aki has a great example here too with the 294. As we mentioned, like he's got more because he's not paying upkeep. But why is upkeep set up that way, right? It's like, oh, he's being rewarded for losing units, but he's not really being rewarded for losing units, right? Because he's going to have a slightly higher revenue, right, for a short time. But what is that revenue going towards? It's not profit. Profit is revenue that you can spend on new units, new tech, and new infrastructure. Specifically, units are literally units you're going to pull out to put on the battlefield. Tech is going to tier 2, purchasing upgrades for your units, all that kind of stuff. Squad leaders I'd also consider to be tech, except when you're replacing them. Then it goes into the attrition column, or reinforcement basically. And then infrastructure basically is your power, since that is contributing to your other resource, and requisition indirectly controls power because you really can't get power without investing in requisition. You can technically do it, but it's much tougher to do it that way. kind of as Lokgar mentioned in the beginning of the game, when CC13 placed the fortifications on both power points, it makes them much easier to hold. I mean, even if for that alone, I mean, that still takes Requisition. So Requisition, very important. When you have a good profit, as mentioned, profit is whatever you are not forced to spend, right? So when you take losses in combat, you're forced to replace them, unless you really don't want to for whatever reason. But usually you're going to want to replace your losses. So those are things those are attrition costs that again are not profit, right? So this is kind of why these assault space marines are going to be replaced here, right? That's going to cut into Aki's profit. He's going to pay more for that, and then of course when they come out, as soon as they come out, his income is going to drop, right? His revenue is going to drop as soon as they come out. So in the meantime, so even though CC13 is paying more upkeep because he's done a better job of keeping his forces alive or has more forces out, whatever standpoint you want to take on that, right? He's number one, he's got more revenue to begin with, right? Because he has all these points captured. So he's being rewarded for capturing these points. And then he even is going to have the opportunity, if he's able to force even more units of Aki's off the field here, to go and take that final requisition point. And, these requisition points are going to be able to cover for his upkeep. And so I guess then we can finally get to upkeep, and then we'll get this moving again. Unless, Lokgar, you have anything to add to?
A quick note on the extra node is giving him plus 59 as opposed to plus 49. He really just could have been a lot quicker into tier 2, and probably maybe even gotten out something that Aki would be unable to really effectively counter.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. It goes back to the relationship between power and requisition, which is that CC13, if we look at the moment, has 683 requisition. It only takes 300 requisition to get to tier 2, right? So what CC13 could have done is he could have built additional generators on this power node down here, especially because he is performing well in combat. I mean, again, we see these just floating all of these resources right now, right? So when you're floating resources like this, what it basically means is that you're not investing in your combat force. So we can almost kind of go back in time and say that there's nothing you needed to buy between some earlier point in time, right, and some later point in time. And the reason why I bring time into this equation is because it takes time to get more requisition, time to get more power, time to build units, time for all these things, right? So time is actually what all these resources relate back to. That's a concept I'll let you guys ponder on your own time, though. Oh, crap. I didn't even mean to do that. But the basic point here is that, with 683 requisition here, right? Even if we kind of go back a couple hundred requisition, so let's say CC13 had 400 requisition, right? And he had 100 power, right? So he could have generators cost 100 requisition. If he doesn't have enough power to get to tier 2, but he has enough requisition to get to tier 2, CC13 can invest his requisition back into power by buying generators to allow him to get to tier 2 faster. So I mean, we see here that the difference between CC13's power income and Aki's power income isn't that great, even though the requisition difference is truly massive, and the combat performance difference has been pretty massive too, as is evidenced by the map control and the population as well. Because actually, Aki's population would be rather similar. If it weren't for his assault squad losses here. As well, we also see that his apothecary is forced off the field. We look at his health, right? The apothecary is forced off the field rather than the warlock being forced off. So any kind of combat losses in here too for CC13 can be a little bit explained by the warlock tanking some damage. And not tanking damage, I mean the apothecary tanked on the other side of the field, right? So basic point going back in here is that had CC13 invested in additional power generators, he would have been able to start researching tier 2 faster. Now you say, okay, he's going to research tier 2, but he's not going to have as many resources when he gets to tier 2, which is a fair argument, but we see how many resources CC13 has right now. And the couple of issues that we have at this are that, number one, when you're researching tier 2, you cannot build anything from your base structure, right? There is no such thing as having two barracks in Dawn of War 2. You have to maximize the production of a single production facility in this game. There is no other way to do it. So generally there's less that you can do until tier 2 is completed. So kind of the nice thing is you're still earning like 350 requisition per minute. So if we just do a really quick rough calculation and say, all right, screw the 75 seconds, we're just going to treat tier 2 like it only takes 60 seconds, and we're going to imagine that CC13 had perfect timing and had exactly 300 requisition, 125 power going into tier 2, right? When he hit the tier 2 button. So 60 seconds from then, he will be in tier 2. How many resources will he have then if he had none at the beginning, right? Well, if he's getting 350 requisition income and 59 power income, he will have 350 requisition by the time that is done. He will have 59 power by the time that's done. So he will have quite a bit of resources at that point. And honestly, it really never works out that way usually. If he bought like one generator here to speed this up just a little bit, he probably still would have had extra requisition. And he would have had a faster power income rate too. So he actually would have been looking at more like maybe 69 power by the time he got to tier 2. So all of these things you can consider as far as how to best leverage your requisition. So now back to upkeep though, just really quickly. So we kind of talked about how you get the first 30 population free. So up until 30 population, you don't have to worry about upkeep. After 30 population, you do. Let's kind of toss that to the side for a second though, and just talk about what upkeep is at the most basic level. Upkeep is basically a secondary resource cost for any unit that you purchase. So when you buy a unit, there's always the cost that's like listed, right? Like it's like, oh, this tactical space marine, right, costs 500 requisition and no power, and what? Well, I know scouts are a 9 pop.
I mean, last time I checked, they were 210, but they might have increased their cost.
Oh no, I wasn't looking so much at the requisition cost of scouts. I'm trying to remember the population cost of tax really quickly, but look it up. Go
I
ahead.
think it's 15 or 18.
It's definitely not 18, especially looking at Aki's. Well, we can probably figure this out. Okay, so if scouts cost 9 population, and we theorize that tax costs 15 population, and there's only one assault space marine at the moment that's counted for any kind of population because the other 2 are dead, how much population does a tactical space marine cost? And yeah, I'd say 15 is probably a pretty decent estimate.
Yeah.
I think both assaults and tax cost 15. Anyway, so you're kind of given those costs, and actually we're even given a time cost now, which is kind of nice. I mentioned that time is an important resource as well, but again, that's something I'll let you guys dwell on for now. We may talk about that a little later or in something, but we've got enough on our plate today, I think. I think everyone can agree on that. So basically, what you aren't told, though, is that every single unit in the game, well, okay, almost every single unit, I can't think of an exception, actually, but I guess if you want to get nitpicky, there may be some kinds of turret, maybe not turrets, but like booby traps. I'm not sure if those cost upkeep or anything, even though they cost population. Almost anything that costs population costs upkeep. And so upkeep is basically an amount per minute, but also it's taken out, again, it's all the stuff, just like you earn requisition and stuff, like per less than a minute, right? Like you see your requisition counter constantly going up, even though it's in like plus 350, you're not getting it in 350 increments. Like you're getting it in much smaller increments sooner. It's just showing you in per minute to give you nicer figures and stuff. Same thing with upkeep, because it'd be pretty small if I gave you like the per second and stuff. So we're just going to talk per minute again, even though again it's assessed differently. Like as mentioned earlier, upkeep, you can kind of figure out what kind of upkeep you're suffering from because you see it in your actual income. Your revenue is actually affected by it in the like little plus, whatever here, because you can go ahead and add up your base income, 264 requisition per minute. That's like standard across all 3 modes too, by the way. I did check that out, and it is. And then you can go ahead and add up all the requisition points that you've got, and you can figure out what you should be earning, right? And then you see it says, no, you're actually earning this, and you're okay. What's between those two things? That's upkeep. So every unit has an upkeep value attached. It will take that amount out of your requisition revenue for each of those units that you have on the field. So, and that's basically each model. So it's not like if you have a full squad, right? So it's not like there's Assault Space Marines, we're going to go back to them. These guys over here, just like they have population per model. By the way, apologies guys. Sometimes, Lokgar and myself have been playing Dawn of War 2 for quite a while, so we do take some things for granted. And I just realized for a while now we've been using this term per model. It's a term that makes perfect sense to us, and maybe it makes perfect sense to a lot of people, but I just want to make sure that it makes sense to everyone. Basically, the term per model is meant to talk about you have squads in Dawn of War 2 and you have units and stuff, but basically, squads have multiple entities of some sort, right? Like multiple figures. So there's multiple Space Marines in a squad, right? So if we go back to looking at these tactical Space Marines, there are 3 tactical Space Marines there, but they're all one squad. They're all controlled as one squad. But how do we say, if we just want to talk about one tactical Space Marine in there, what do we refer to them as? We refer to that as one model. So when you hear about per model and stuff, that's what we're talking about.
A pretty good way to demonstrate this is the tactical Marines. If you actually click on them, you'll see that the one standing by himself has his own little circle, selection circle under him, while the other 2 have their own, but since they're together, it looks the same. But really, each model will take different cover bonuses depending on what cover they're under, where they're facing. So you can have 2 models under not yellow cover, which isn't as good as green cover. So those 2 models are taking extra damage than the one in green model, or 2 of them aren't on the right side of cover or something, and it's really, you really need to learn how to control the models in this game effectively to win.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that basically each model has its own health. I mean, really, even though you're controlling squads, squads literally are groups of units, groups of models, groups of specific, fully fledged entities in the game. They are not just glorified units with multiple pieces of art scattered around, right? It's not like one big unit with a bunch of pieces of art. They really are individual entities and thus models. So that's what we call them. So when we talk about per model, we're saying per thing in the squad, whatever that thing is, per each of those. So let's get back to the Assault Space Marines. There's only one left, right? So again, when we talk about per model population, we're saying that for each model in the squad, it has its own population value. Then the summation of those population values is what you see when you purchase a squad. So let's say the Assault Space Marines cost 15 population. Right now, there's only one left, so it's only contributing 5 population to the total population. So going to upkeep now, the whole squad may cost a certain amount of upkeep, but at the moment, there's only one model in the squad, so only that is contributing to upkeep right now. So this is why when we were talking earlier about how Aki is actually below the upkeep threshold right now, the upkeep threshold being 30, beyond which you begin to pay upkeep on the forces that you have. By the way, okay, I'll get back to that. Let's finish this thought first. Sorry about that, guys. When this squad is full, obviously, then you're going to have more upkeep, because again, it's all per model, so it's all affected in different ways. So it goes down to that level. Now, there is one thing I'm going to give you guys really quick, one awesome piece of information for those of you guys who want to take this a step further, and you want to kind of be able to go and do a really nice estimate on what your current upkeep is, and for all of your forces and stuff. If you can look at your population, there is kind of this ratio between upkeep and population. Relic has designed most units to conform to what amounts to an average upkeep of sorts, and or a standard, however you want to define it. It's basically this figure that I'd have to say easily more than 50% of the units in the game, quite possibly more than 2/3, definitely borderline 75%. Of the units in the game cost 2.55 upkeep per minute per unit of population. So what that's saying is, if we go back to these Assault Space Marines, right, So there's one model in the squad right now. That model costs 5 population. So if we're saying that it follows standard upkeep, right? So standard upkeep is 2.55 is what we're saying. So this one model costs 5 population. Our estimate then, because again we're hoping that this is a 2.55 model, is a standard upkeep, unit, right? Is then that this unit should be 2.55 times 5 units of population, and then we can go ahead and get whatever that outcome is, right? I guess I could pull up calculator. Never mind. But I think it comes out to be somewhere around 12.50 or 12.75, somewhere around there. It's in I think it's like 12.75 is what it comes out to be. I did a lot of work on upkeep not too long ago for GR and some other things just for my own knowledge to try and figure it out. So I got really used to seeing like a lot of standard values of like, this would be this and that would be that, blah blah blah. So anyway, so the way to leverage this, right, is that you can then just take 2.55, multiply it by your current population, and that's basically your upkeep. But then you've got to, of course, subtract out 2.55 times 30 in order to really get a better estimate, because, you get 30 population free, so you've got to take that out. So with that said, there are some units, some notable units like catechins are one of the really, really big red lights on that. They cost way more than 2.55. They're like over +1 more than the standard, which doesn't sound like much, but it's actually a lot when you consider that that's for every unit of population, right? So if the squad is 15 or like I think catechins are like 14 population, right? So it's actually like an extra 14 upkeep on that squad than would be standard. When you start getting like multiple of those squads, this is why like those dual catechin builds and stuff are very, very risky, because they can really kill your requisition economy very quickly, just because of how much upkeep they inflict on you. But also, so there are also units though that cost less upkeep. I'm not sure if knobs still are, but knobs were one of the units that did cost less upkeep. I'm not sure if they changed that when they changed the reinforced costs on them to be overweighted. And speaking of reinforced costs are usually the price of the unit. So take the price of the squad that right? So let's go back to Tactical Space Marines. For every model in that squad now, divide every model of that squad into the total cost of Tactical Space Marines, right? So that 500 requisition divided by 3, and then divide that by 2, and that's your standard reinforced cost. Again, some units break ranks from that. Knobs are notable in that they're a little overweighted for that at the moment. They pay a little more than standard, but most units obey that, just like most units obey the upkeep rule of about 2.55 upkeep per population.
Yeah, and well, I'll just mention this when we unpause the game, so never mind.
Alright, so just to answer a couple things in the chat really quick. Sorry about the tangents, guys. At the moment, I'm 5-star General, and Lord Lokgar is in the chat with me. Hi,
What's
Lokgar. Right now, this game is CC13 versus Aki. We're just going over requisition-related matters. And apparently we need to go ahead and add some stuff to show the math on screen. I'm working on some articles for game replays, so we'll go over it then. But we kind of want to go over it now in the daily, because this is one of the things we want to kind of get out of the way, help you guys out with, and then we just mostly our biggest thing is we want to make you guys aware of this stuff, right? We want to let you guys know that it exists, and then we'll help you find the resources. Later we've got our thread on. I've got a thread going on game replays that kind of shows you every single cast that we're going to do and what we've done. And I'll certainly reply to that with other useful links that you guys want to know. If you guys are curious about something you hear in the show and you want more information on that, definitely ask me there. We'll also be checking the iCup forums, either the iCup TV in the Dawn of War 2 section, or the regular iCup ones in the Dawn of War 2 section. So all of that we'll definitely be checking. So one last thing before we finally unpause the game, I'm just going to go back really, really, really quickly to the first 30 population free. The last thing I have to say about that is that literally it is you get the first 30 population free. I can't tell you exactly what units in that first 30 population are going to be free in the long run. I wish I could. I did some testing. It turned out it had some hiccups each and every time. It seems like literally the first units you buy are, but it gets really hairy when you start losing units and you go under 30 and you go back over 30 and blah 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 blah. So we're not going to get too much, not going to talk about that at all. But I just wanted to say though that it's not like when you get to 31 population, right? That all of a sudden you pay for 31 population worth of upkeep. No, you only pay for 1 population worth of upkeep. It's everything over 30. With that, Lokgar, if you have anything else to add to this, then
I can. It's a very short note we can do when it's unpaused.
All right, let's unpause it then and get this going again. Let me just reintroduce the game really fast because I think everyone's forgotten by now. I'm really sorry about that, guys.
And of course, a countdown.
And a countdown. CC13, Eldar Warlock against Aki, Space Marine, Apothecary. This was originally an ESL game in the tournament they recently held. So we are recasting it and going over Requisition as our focus today. Our focus is Requisition points, upkeep, attrition, all that kind of stuff. In the later portion of this game that's coming up, we're going to be getting a lot into attrition because it is going to play a huge role. So we're going to restart this now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
My quick note is that while we mentioned a lot about upkeep and a lot of mathematical things relating to the economy, for new players, I would highly suggest just focusing on keeping Requisition and power points under your control, and then be aware that upkeep exists, but don't be too worried about the specifics of it. Don't stress out about it. Just make sure to get the capping portion of the game down, the capping and fighting part down first, and then you can focus on upkeep and such.
Yeah, one of the beauties about Dawn of War 2's economic system is that it's really complex. I literally sat there probably for about 25 minutes right now. It wouldn't surprise me just talking on a screen with no action going on, right? And I wouldn't have to do that for StarCraft 2 generally. Maybe I don't think I would have gone, but long story short, it's very complex in theory. But it's all designed to be streamlined to allow that combat and it's designed to allow the player to have basic control, basically, right? So they're just very basic things. Like in this instance, as we were talking about, CC13 has all of these requisition points controlled, right? And now he's even decapturing the natural requisition point of Aki just by doing this simple action, like recognizing, okay, holding requisition points is good, right? Like CC13 has already just executed most of what we talked about. Like, requisition points overcome upkeep. Okay, great. CC13 has already got that down, right? And
he just decapped it and sent his Warlock back once he noticed that Aki was starting to respond, which is excellent. He hurt his economy and then put his Warlock back into the action, so now Aki can't dedicate any forces to recapturing that. And he's forced to duke it out in the middle, and that's just lost requisition in that he could have capped it and started letting it mature, except he can't because the Warlock came back into play.
And now we do see, though, that the scouts were able to get off a full cap, actually, in the bottom requisition node there. So Aki is trying to swing things back around in his favor at this point. He recognized that he cannot continue to allow CC13 to have all of these points. And by the way, I do want to point out something really quick here on CC13's Warlock. We see Witchblade of Kurnaus and Warp Throw, both equipped. This is classic CC13 if you've watched CC13 at all. He absolutely loves using Kurnaus and Warp Throw and all sorts of, Eldar combinations that everyone just groans at the second that they see them. So certainly expect to see a lot of that. Expect to see a decannon as well.
Also, another thing, CC13 might not have started up that tech up just because he was confident that he had most of the requisition. He was inflicting heavy model losses. He was probably feeling really good about where Aki was, except Aki managed to tech up, and now this Razorback is out, and CC13 really has nothing that's able to counter it. The Warp Spiders can use Haywire Grenades, which are basically sticky grenades for vehicles to slow it down and deal a little bit of damage, but nothing that can really finish it off.
Yeah,
and now we're about to see great usage of this Razorback to bleed him, I believe.
Yeah, we saw a Ranger squad go down, and also I want to mention that in that last battle, coming up to this one, the Banshees actually lost their Exarchs, so that's granted, CC13 has a lot of resources right now, but Dawn of War 2 is kind of a game where, if again we want to talk about the economic portion of it, income generally matters more than stockpiles. Your stockpiles can get depleted incredibly quickly through attrition. So in this case, losing CC13 is starting to lose stuff now, and this is all going to become significant. Even though he has a lot of resources floating around right now, that isn't going to save him the rest of the game. So that loss, even though it seems like that it's a small thing to replace Banshee Exarch, it really isn't.
Ooh, and Scout Squad gets wiped on retreat from the Banshees.
Apparently, both of the players are complaining about lag during the game, so that's why Aki seems to be saying the same thing here.
Well, it was more like he lost the squad on retreat, I believe, because CC13 typed that when the Rangers died on retreat. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't see a lag message, and I think they'll show up on replays.
They do. Actually, I saw one, but
oh, my bad, I didn't see that. But we do see this Razorback doing a lot of model damage. Forced the Warlock to stop trying to cap that VP. Killed a Guardian, killed a few Banshees, and like I said, CC13 has nothing to really counter it. So this Razorback is able just to rampage. Also, to note is the Razorback is a transport vehicle. Aki can load up infantry into it and unload later, and reinforce from it. So that's going to allow his units to stick out in battle even more. Once he takes over these requisition points, he's going to have the income necessary to replace some of the models lost on the TACs and ASMs.
As well, just the sheer mobility of the Razorback, it is one of the faster vehicles in the game. That is going to allow Aki, and already is allowing actually, to push back out kind of on the map and to reclaim a lot of this map control.
Yeah, and we just see him chasing around, taking shots out with the Razorback and keeping his forces close by to defend if necessary.
Yeah, he does have to be aware of the Haywire and Banshee Exarch combination, hence why he's not getting up close and personal with that Razorback.
I do like his ability to keep the Razorback near the requisition points. He's giving them time to mature up. So, and then also pressuring enough that CC13 wasn't able to take out that gen farm within a split second. But now it seems that he's just letting it go down for the requisition and the VPs, because with only 46 VPs, he really needs to keep this top part under his control.
Yeah, he really can't afford to lose it. And actually, Aki may well be done with the majority of his power at this point in the game.
Especially with Warp Spiders too, because they're very easy to ninja cap with. Just teleport in and try to ninja cap. Aki really just is going to be stationary for the majority of this game. But luckily for him, there are plenty of resources up top. A power node, 3 requisition points, and 2 victory points.
So something of 2 things of big interest are happening right now on the unit training end and teching end, I guess you want to say. CC13 is going tier 3, and in the meantime we have Aki building an assault space marine squad, a tier 1 squad in tier 2. Not very uncommon at all, especially not for space marines. But it is rather interesting here because we have kind of a very big contrast between the players at the moment. CC13 is kind of confidently just teching up here, going for the higher tech. In the meantime, Aki is digging in, really wanting to invest in tier 2, and he's going to try and combat this this tech and maybe make a bit of a push now, because there is a bit of an opening that CC13 is leaving at present for Aki to do that. But we do see he's got to play defensive because he's so low on victory points. But he will start to get some power up at least.
And this second assault marine is going to do nicely against this D cannon that's coming out. The D cannon is essentially a setup team like the Shuriken cannon, or any setup team for that matter. But it's an artillery machine, and the Shuriken goes down to the assault marines. This Warlock is in a spot of trouble, but the slash knocks him back. All the ASMs, and the Warlock does go down.
Off anyway. And that D cannon is just way too close at this point. He's going to get one shot off on the tax, but very dangerous position here. And we just saw it. Let's go over to the army tab now. We can just see that CC13's army now has just taken a serious blow. He lost that Shuriken. He added the D cannon in its place, sort of, but that certainly wasn't the result that he wanted. And now we see these tacs are moving down to the bottom. Aki is now feeling a little bit safer to kind of spread out his map control a bit. And one of the interesting things about this Razorbat too, by the way, with this force composition, is that this kind of gives Aki the kind of like total in-field like advantage as Apothecary, because he can heal his units, and we saw it just go down right there on the Assault Space Marines. He can heal his units, and he can reinforce them all without ever retreating.
Which is also very important for low model count, high HP squads, since they spend a lot of time in base healing up if they don't need to reinforce. And we saw the Haywire go down on the Razorback that does a snare. The Banshee Exarch with the spear, she does AV damage, but they're taking a lot of damage from the Assault Marines. And Angels of Death pop, that's a global ability for the Apothecary, making all of his infantry invulnerable, and he used that as soon as the Singularity from the D-Cannon popped, which is essentially an ability that creates a black hole that sucks in units around and deals massive damage. And that was just a wonderful usage of a global ability to keep his Assault Marines from taking any damage from that.
Well, actually, Angels of Death, as I recall, it's not invulnerability. It's just you can't die, so you can get down to like 1 health but not die. I believe is how the ability works.
I'm pretty certain that one is no damage taken.
Unless they've changed it, but I don't. Well, we'll double check that, but that conflicts with my use. Conflicts with my usage of it.
Yeah, I thought it was like that since like Retail 1.0. I could be completely wrong. Oh, also, Tactical Marines cap at 1.5 speed, so they're very good for capping around even if they move around pretty slow.
Yeah, and actually, honestly, 5 speed really isn't that slow. The entire Orc army moves at speed 5. So this was a very interesting jump here, by the way, by these Space Marines. We saw that they jumped actually behind the Warp Spiders there. And like basically their jump would not have hit the Warp Spiders where the Warp Spiders were. They jumped such that they landed behind them. The reason for Aki doing that was that, as you saw, the Warp Spiders, in their jump to dodge the incoming jump, right, or the warp, right, the warp jump that they did it to hop back, which then, because the Assault Space Marines jumped long, right, allowed them to immediately attack the Warp Spiders as soon as they stopped. So it was a very nice little micro trick there to go ahead and do that.
This Razorback is just doing a massive amount of like model loss. It's still alive. I can't believe it, honestly. It's doing an amazing job of keeping it
finally
alive.
Where it's going to take it out.
VP count 114 to 46. Aki is still a little bit low, but it's still lower than CC13, but with all 3 VPs and really just a good foothold. He wiped out so many squads. He's got Devastators now to cover the bottom VP, or maybe he's sending them to the top. Yeah, he's sending them to the top.
Yeah, he seems to just be leaving the TAC Marines at the bottom VP for now. I kind of would like to see them maybe just grab Flamers really fast and harass that power node in the middle there. Do something. And we do have an auto coming out, but let's kind of go back to the economy here for a second. Aki actually has kind of slowed his attrition losses greatly ever since getting that Razorback and these 2 Assault Space Marines out. He hasn't been taking nearly as many losses as he was taking previously. And we've seen CC13 taking massive losses, constantly having to replace Warp Spiders, constantly replacing Guardians, constantly replacing Banshees, D-Cannon members, just about everything in his army, including having to get his commander up. And by the way, grenading himself there too wasn't too smooth either. But basically this whole game has turned completely around because Aki got that Razorback out and really some nice micro, pushback, took map control back. And then actually, again, we kind of look, and there was one requisition point that Aki never quite got around to capturing in the middle there, which is still fully matured for CC13. Other than that, though, you see that actually by the end of the game here, the other requisition points are fully matured, well, except for CC13's natural, but the other contestable ones, I guess I would say, are all matured in Aki's favor. So he definitely turned things quite a bit around there. Again, I mean, we kind of go back to CC13's... Well, I think there were 2 things, actually, both in the tier changes for CC13, in terms of how long it took him to press Go Tier 2. And also, the choice to go Tier 3 there did not seem, to go Tier 3 at that point without taking care of the Razorback. I'm not quite sure if I'd call it arrogant or if I'd call it not the smartest thing in the world, but certainly it was not the best decision because it definitely didn't pay off for him. I was also kind of surprised that he went with the D-Cannon over a Fire Prism.
Yeah, that's. I probably would have actually went for another Banshee squad and just upgraded it fully because 2 Banshees with Warp Spiders probably would have handled the Razorback, and extra Banshees can never really hurt against Assault Marines or Tacticals.
And even may I utter the word, Bright Lance. I know it may not be the best AV platform in the world, people, but
it is a setup. For players who don't know, it is a setup with an Arc of Fire. But it is Eldar's primary anti-vehicle, and using conjunction with Haywires can actually be pretty devastating.
Yeah, basically it only costs 300 requisition. For CC13, he had a huge amount of requisition income when the Razorback initially hit. He had the Warp Spiders coming out already. He had the resources to go ahead and grab that Bright Lance. Even if you just go from... if you take the 300 requisition that he spent on going to Tier 3, right, and you invest that in a Bright Lance, it goes ahead and takes care of that Razorback, and it takes care of any subsequent Razorbacks too, right? Like, people are concerned about, okay, if I invest in a pure AV weapon, that it's not useful against anything else, right? The thing is, though, it deters additional Razorbacks and the current Razorback, which actually would force Aki to completely shift his strategy in this case, and we see that strategy that Aki was using with the Razorback was integral for his success. So having to shift to something else may well not have worked, even if CC13 had to have one maybe now useless unit in order to do it. That unit probably already proved its worth, honestly.
Yeah, that Razorback usage was really good. Sorry. Again, slightly sick still. But I am paused at 5 in the second replay we're going to do.
Yeah, we're going to have to go through this one a little faster.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and give that a real quick introduction. It's Nario, who's playing the Lictor Alpha Tyranids, versus Pega, who goes by the name Duck now, as a Commissar Lord Imperial Guard. The map is Legis High Stratum. One thing to note on this map is when we mentioned the natural requisition points and natural points, on this map, what could be considered the natural requisition point is a fair hike from the headquarters, so it's a very easy point to decap and just run away before the enemy can respond to it with retreating units and such.
Yeah, this whole map actually is quite a good map for like backcapping and stuff. If we just go ahead and take a look around really fast, I know we're on a tight schedule here, and I'm sorry guys, we're not going to get to casting Game 1 or Game 2 Friday's show match today. It's just too late, unfortunately, but we will get to that eventually. Anyway, let's go ahead and take where the kind of location of these requisition points, and just these points in general. So we've got like points on both the sides here, like on the outlier edges, right? It's really far away from the base. There's no easy path to like the center of the level either for these outlier requisition points. So like the only real combat you see around them actually is ninja cap, and you rarely see any kind of big battle around there because they're just not areas of concentration at all. So VPs are in the center and kind of on the sides a bit. The VPs are in a little more centered areas because they have better access points. If you look at the access points, that is what distinguishes them from the true outliers here. Then you have the power nodes, which are a little bit in front of the VPs. These tend to be really tough to hold, partially because of the VPs near them, also because they are a fair distance from each player's base. And again, they are still slightly off the beaten path. You tend to see a lot of combat in this map in the middle, near the victory points and the 2 power nodes, especially because those walls can be broken.
Yeah, I was also going to mention that quick Tier 2 vehicles, the transports and such, can break down walls. Any vehicle can actually, but those are the cheapest to do it, and then you can gen bash very easily.
Alright, so I think we're ready to get this show rolling. In
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, so in the top we have Pega as Commissar Lord, And in the bottom, we've got Nerea as Lictor Alpha.
Also, Lictor Alpha is a stealthing hero. Starts out able to stealth for an energy cost, similar to cloaking, and a flesh hook, which is essentially like imagine Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. He can pull any model he wants, dealing quite a bit of damage. Some models an instant kill, like these guardsmen, a model would probably be instant killed. I'm pretty sure instant killed,
definitely.
and then pulled towards if the model survives. So against the hero, the hero might survive it, and then probably will if he's at full health, and then just be pulled towards the Tyranid army. Things like energy shields and such, which a lot of heroes do have through war gear upgrades, can block the knockback and damage.
And by the way, the Commissar Lord does start with an energy shield, which he just popped right now.
And we do see a multi-laser turret. The turret doesn't suppress; it does damage. I believe it doesn't suppress, but
No, it doesn't suppress.
Very early turret going up at the central VP. So Pega is probably going to go try to hold the middle VP and Ninja Cap around the sides. Simply because, as 5-Star said, the way the map is designed, the middle is the most contested, easily contested zone just because of how open it is. So a lot of the fighting will be focused there.
It is going to be really tough to Ninja Cap against Nerea, because Nerea, as we've seen in the past, is really good about really pressuring non-central points, or I should really say he's really good about pressuring central points with main forces, and then using capping squads to go around the edges and really maximize the effectiveness of those capping squads and those single squads and whatnot. So Pega's going to have his work cut out for him there. We do see this multi-laser turret is providing valuable support in the middle for Pega. Pretty good bastion. We also see that Pega has upgraded both of his guardsman squads with sergeants, so they are, instead of 6 out of 6 members, 9 out of 9. We saw here a little nice micro trick from Nerea. He actually forced meleeed the guardsmen with his Termagant broods, because guardsmen are horrible in melee. Basically, they're one of the few squads that only does like a very tiny amount better in melee than they do in range. It's literally so little that it's not even worth having them force melee stuff, retreating right through them. You're better off just shooting with them still. But that's like almost never anything that's true for anything else. Anyway, though, but that is definitely better for those Termagants there. They definitely won that battle in a better way.
And again, the cripple shot going down before the guardsmen can get into cover, and we see how quickly they just get slaughtered.
Yeah.
When they're not in cover, and cover is so essential to this game.
Yeah, they were also outgunned there, especially despite the execute ability that Pega popped on his Commissar Lord.
Yeah. Executability, one thing to note, it kills a model off to buff the rest of the, I believe, squads nearby. So it's a little bit of a cost/benefit thing you have to calculate in your head and make a split-second decision. We see the guardsman squad surviving. The Fletcher goes out on the sergeant. The sergeant survives with 6 HP. That
Not
is
very much at all.
Yeah, that's still 8 models to reinforce. The Devils are out on the field meleeing the Lictor Alpha. The Lictor Alpha is upgraded with Feuded Tendrils. It's going to allow him to heal on every hit, but it's not doing much, and the Lictor Alpha could go down.
Oh, we see Execute used on those Catechins, by the way. They're doing extra damage right now. And we see the multi-laser turret actually finishes off the Lictor Alpha. So they're actually... Pega had taken terrible attrition losses here. Remember, though, the Sergeants allow him to reinforce at twice the rate that he usually would be able to. So between all of that, and then just all these losses now that Nerea has just taken, I think Nerea actually has just swung the attrition more away from his favor, especially in losing his hero there. That was such a big loss. It's so much requisition to get him back. 250 doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a lot at this stage in the game, especially when you talk about, again, kind of going back to revenue versus profit. That is completely not profit. When you're trying to, in the early game, you want pure profit so that you can continue to build your forces up to your desired force composition and everything. That is completely counterproductive to that.
Right. Pega needs to capitalize on this and try to disrupt some of this requisition income, because while Naria did take a huge loss, the sheer amount of requisition points he has is allowing him to slowly build this up, that as long as he doesn't lose any more squads, he should be fine in terms of model reinforcement ability if he keeps his requisition points.
Yeah, we do see that Naria has almost 75 extra requisition income per minute here compared to Pega. and I mean, part of that is due to slightly less upkeep, but most of that really is due to just having more map control at the moment.
I do like this mid-combat repair on the turret. If you notice here, Narya isn't actually attacking any of the units. Essentially, he committed a ton of resources to try to take out that turret. That turret did not go down. I think maybe repairing takes a little bit of upkeep. I'm not too sure on that, actually.
No, it doesn't. It just takes time, that's it.
Look at how many units Narya lost. Even with all that extra disposable requisition income, slowly it's being taken away from him with this backcapping guardsman squad. And now he's feeling the pain. He doesn't have enough to reinforce right off the bat. He's feeling the pain of losing all of those models with practically nothing to show for it. The turret is now at full HP, still defending that location as it has been doing so all game.
Yeah, he really didn't even inflict very many attrition, if any attrition losses at all, on Pega. And this is something we're going to continue to see in this game here between Narya and Pega, is that Narya is going to be ahead as far as requisition income and such, and yet Pega is going to just focus here on dealing with these pushes here, like this again with these Termagants not making any progress whatsoever on trying to move in, and now they're going to try and move in again here for like wave 2.
And just alone, look how much difference cover does. These guardsmen are taking fire from three different squads. Still able to stick around enough to deal enough damage to make it worth the time to stick around. But Pega does need to retreat them now. They're about to be lost.
Excellent use of Smoke Bomb. An incredibly underused ability, but Pega making perfect usage of it there. For those of you that do not know, what Smoke Bomb does is it effectively produces a cover in the area in which it's cast, and the cover kind of is a pro-con sort of cover because it reduces the outgoing range damage of anything in it, but it also reduces the incoming range damage of anything in it as well. So what it basically allows you to do, like right there, all the stuff shooting at those guardsmen as they're retreating, they're out of cover at that point, and yet the Smoke Bomb is allowing them to basically remain within cover and take reduced range damage, so they were able to get out without dying, which is kind of really nice for Pega, because, you know, replacing that entire squad won't be very fun. So Smoke Bomb is a great thing to use while capping. It's a great thing to use to just kind of control battles however you want here. By the way, nice little bit of a bleed here that Narya is inflicting on this capping guardsman squad. This Literalpha just running around with his little tendrils there and just hitting them one at a time, basically one shot in each model. They finally found a building to hole up in.
I want to point out this booby trap usage from Pega. I do like it because Narya went another excellent usage of smoke bombs.
Yeah, you're going to see here, this makes no sense because remember, it reduces outgoing range damage, and they're just sitting here, so technically it doesn't do anything, right? But it buys Pega time to allow the Commissar Lord to come in and force that entire range blob off.
And yeah, and he was able to force it off and probably kill this Lictor too. And Lictor Alpha goes down yet again. And only one model lost on the catechins.
Yeah, and that all came down to micro there. It was a great job by Pega, recognizing that was just the absolute perfect time to use Execute there. And we do see the Capping Guardsman squad targeted here by Spore Mines, but they are going to be able to get out with just the Sergeant. Remember, the Sergeant does allow the Imperial Guard squad to reinforce, to basically get an extra guardsman for free. So he's only going to have to pay for 4 guardsmen, and he'll get 8.
Also, we see the exact opposite happening in Narya. What happened to X13 last game? He has 300 power, but not enough requisition to even tech up. And Pega almost has his first transporter vehicle out.
Yeah, that Chimera is actually just about a trademark at Pega's, honestly. I can't think of a Pega game I've seen recently, or played against Pega recently, where he has not pulled a Chimera out at some point. So that's certainly expected from him. And it'll, of course, be interesting to see how he uses it. And we'll definitely put pressure on Narya. Narya's getting a nice gem bash off here, though.
Right. It'll be interesting to see if this Chimera is used as well as that Razorback in the last game to bleed Requisition out.
He does seem to have 1 guardsman squad in it, which would explain the kind of extra lasers coming out of it, the extra damage.
Right, and he's backcapping requisition points again with the guardsman and his commissar lord. I do like the booby traps everywhere. Naria went Raveners instead of warrior brutes to try to deal with that turret, and that means he has absolutely no detection, and he has no idea these booby traps are around because he hasn't triggered one yet. But the moment he hits one, oh wait, no, he has triggered one. So,
yeah, he actually lost like one Ravener model, and the entire squad got brought down to 165 health with that first booby trap. And we're going to see that one at the top of the stairs near the right victory point is going to be pretty useful pretty soon.
mines in general are really great in this game. Few heroes have them. The mech boy, though they did reduce the damage on them considerably unless they buffed them up without my knowledge.
The mech boy's mines are a little, I don't know if I want to say lackluster, but they're not quite as fun as tech brain mines and stuff right now.
Ravener alpha mines are also very underused, but very good. We see this Chimera being used for just excellent ability, like just taking out a Termagon squad, forcing them to retreat, and a Manticore coming out. Manticores, very low HP, slow moving, but having a long range missile barrage ability that can be devastating to squads such as Termagons, Raveners, really anything in general, especially with Pega's crowd control ability that he's been demonstrating so far with the Catechins.
Yeah, they are, I mean, they're just the definition of artillery units, Manticores. They only fire via ability, by the way, unless you count the little machine
auto
gun.
attack.
Yeah, the little
like
machine gun
thing.
front, yeah. But if anything's in range of that, it's usually bad for your Manticore. It only has 275 health, so it's pretty easy to destroy if you've got even the slightest bit of AV near it.
Huh. Now, AV is out anti-vehicle, sorry, for Naria, which in the form of Venom Broods. Now, Venom Broods don't deal much damage to infantry at all. Hormagaun's go down, and the Manticore is firing. And Venom Brood, one model down. Also, very important to note, I'm not too sure how, I haven't touched on this before at all, actually. Each warrior, that's Venom Brood, they're technically warriors. Each model of a warrior or synapse-giving creature, when it dies, will cause synapse backlash. And all of the lesser Tyranids, that means the Gaunts, the Raveners, all of those units that benefit from synapse will take damage and be knocked down to the ground. And we saw that there when the warrior brood died. Everything just fell down around him. And we'll see this booby trap go to good use right now, I assume.
Almost, not quite. The Raveners are burrowing, by the way, not doing Berserk. Oh, right there we go. That actually wiped an entire squad and took another Termagon down to 2 out of 8 models. And the Raveners even took quite a bit of damage from it, even though they were underground at the time. Or actually, I'm not even sure if they're still underground because they're just invisible for me. It's a little bit of a bug here.
They're slightly invisible to me too. And the Manticore is actually doing a good job of just bombarding VPs that are being decapped to give himself more time to respond with a bigger force. He's been doing a very good job of stalling with abilities and for small seconds that allows him to get back into the fight. And now the Catechins will be able to defend this Manticore and Chimera fairly easily once they get into it, while the Chimera is just doing a number on this Lictor Alpha, forcing him to retreat without even fully capping the VP.
But the Venom Brood is going to move up and challenge that Chimera. And, but then again, the Catechins are going to come up right behind him, and this is a little dangerous for them now, because Catechins do have power melee, which is basically, we'll get into all the weapon types at another time, I suppose, but you could say that it's the counter to heavy infantry armor in some ways.
Which is what warriors are, which makes them power infantry units very, very ideal for causing synapse backlash.
Plasma also is quite good for that.
Indeed.
That's kind of like your ranged version of power melee.
And again, usage of the Manticore's bombardment ability to buy himself time to respond to any sort of threat.
Nice, very nice dodge there, though, by Naria. We are seeing that he's kind of keeping a good track on that for now. It will remain to be seen, though, if he's able to do that throughout the game. We do see a Tyrant Guard coming out, though, possibly going to be looking to run towards Pega's base to just go ahead and take that out.
He did destroy his own wall, though, which will allow Pega to gen bash more easily if he fends this threat off.
It also allows slightly faster access to the middle of the Fernaria, which may not be a bad thing. So
Also, look if we look into the economy tab, Pega only has 181 income. So even though he's been doing all these amazing squad wipes, Narya still has a healthy stockpile simply because he's held onto these points for a very long time now. Oh, and a Venom Brood just got wiped out from the Manticore, so there goes his stockpile basically.
yeah, he's gonna have to go ahead and reinvest in that.
This really just goes to show why squad preservation is so important as well as having the economy. If he was able to hold on to a few more squads, this might be a little bit different. He lost a Tyrant Guard.
Yep. Narya is just losing quite a few squads at this point. And, you know, he's lost quite a few capping squads as well. He's still maintaining very dominant map control, though. Very dominant requisition income. Remember, part of that requisition income issue is actually, I believe, Manticores actually aren't that bad on, I think they still use the standard 2.55, but they're 15 population, which I think it's just kind of the 68 population here for Pega's quite a bit, and then he doesn't really have any requisition points to offset that. And of course those catechins.
The catechins are just have been used amazingly this whole game. That ability with the Commissar executes. Remember, I'm sorry, I can't really remember the name at this point in time. Has been used almost in every major engagement that Pega has won. I mean, it's very risky in that you lose a model, but it
and you
really
can't
does.
retreat out of it either.
Right, but it really does. He's been using it amazingly to deal enough damage to win the battles.
What I was referring to with the catechins before, by the way, was actually as far as their upkeep being very, very high.
Oh, oops! I thought you were just complimenting his ability to use them.
No, his ability to use them is also great. By the way, what we saw just a little bit earlier there with the Commissar Lord, he has the Flak Jacket, which grants him the Inspire Terror ability. It basically allows him to use his Execute ability on enemy squads to deal like up to 350 damage, I believe. So it basically allows him to snipe warrior models, and there's also an additional debuff that goes along with that. And also we saw the Manticore has been really effective now against Narya. He seems to be, I'm not sure if he's just getting frustrated with the Manticore at this point, and just not really maintaining as much map awareness as he had been. We saw a really like reckless attempt to kind of go in there and take it out earlier, and losing the Tyrant Guard in the process. That's just really not the way you want to lose a Tyrant Guard. And you know, again, we saw a capping squad loss there, so kind of just have to wonder as to the state, you know, what Nari is feeling at this point in time.
We also have to keep in mind that this map is fairly small. That allows the Manticore just to be in the range of the base turrets and just doing these massive amounts of damage. And another call-in on the VPs, dealing some massive damage. I don't think any losses, but again, buying him enough time to reinforce, respawn, gather his troops, and all of that.
And actually to continue with ninja capping on this left side of his, well, I don't know if I call it capturing his own natural requisition point, ninja capping. Here's another desperate attempt to go after the Manticore. This cannot end well.
Also, suppression basically slows down your units. Ranged units fire less frequently because they have a higher reload time and cooldown time. That's why they couldn't finish off that Chimera. They were suppressed, that they were on their reload, and that's just an amazing usage. Like, just backing up a vehicle into a suppression platform will do amazing amounts to protect it. And Lictor Alpha does go down, so even though Narya is floating a lot, he can't really spend that, and he gets a Carnifex, so that's what he was saying.
I was going to say, yeah, no, he wasn't floating anything there. This is an Narya, man. You're going to see Carnifexes left and right.
I hope Barb Strangler. Barb Strangler Carnifexes on this map are awesome.
Not Thornback all the way.
Yeah, this map, though, with all these, like, just how kind of small the lanes are, and the fact that there's so many unpassable cliffs and such, the Barb Strangler can just fire over them, attack ground into guardsmen squads. It's amazing.
Watch out for this Venom Brood. Kaboom! Taking out a model and then just reducing the other two quite a bit. Now, actually, these Venom Broods here thinking the mines were responsible for this. No way, those weren't mines, my good friend. You just walked right over a booby trap. And now we see the Pega again going, having the Manticore go down, hit the victory point, just kind of to delay the Venom Birds there from going ahead and capping it. But yeah, by the way, I wasn't... I completely agree as far as the Barb Strangler Carnifex. Just, you know, here goes the Thornback. This is an aria, man.
And Thornback is very common. A lot of players just want the Thornback, but not many players really just understand how good the Barb Strangler is. Also, Barb Strangler does a little bit of AV damage as well, if you can deal with the slow projectile speed.
Yeah. We should probably mention kind of what the difference between the two variants are. Thornback, it just basically improves the melee capabilities of the Carnifex, and it allows them to use charge and to spawn Rippers. We'll see Rippers later on, so we'll focus on them then when they come out. Oh, but first, we've got a global nuke coming down, and there goes the Manticore, only +6 red. What?
And the Chimera already goes down as well at the same exact time, thanks to the Thornback. That was a really good nuke. He used it right when the Manticore couldn't move because it was busy launching its missiles.
Yeah, that was just perfect timing by Narya there. But now again, this Carnifex is being really aggressive, and for what reason here? Is he buying time for capping? Yes, he does seem to be doing that, but is it worth wasting the Carnifex? I don't know if this Carnifex is going to get out of here alive, because that Commissar Lord has Power Fist on him. Now we're going to see a call in here for Spore Mines, which we're probably going to go in here and maybe try and save the Carnifex. I'm not really sure.
Narya should be focusing on the Guardsman, in my opinion. Inflict as much... If he's already dedicated himself to killing off the Carnifex and sacrificing it, he should try to hurt Pega's economy as much as he can.
Remember that Guardsmen are pretty light economic, you know...
They would still be a constant drain. If we look back, he focused all of his power onto the turrets as well before, and he just focused 700 wreck and over 200 power worth on a single model squad, which didn't even die. He basically just sacrificed that bombing run.
Mostly on Pega's own units.
That was hilarious. The Commissar Lord, not afraid to die at all, rushes into his own air run and to chase away the Tyranids. What a man.
So in the meantime, we see that Pega is kind of pushing back out on the map again here. He seems to be much happier with his requisition situation now. Granted, losing 2 Tier 2 vehicles will probably do that for you. In the meantime, we see these spawning mines all the way up on this left side victory point. He's got 1 booby trap over there. He's got a Catachin squad, which can detect the Lictor Alpha, by the way. On top of that, on the right side, he's got that Capping Guardsman squad. And he's actually also pushing his Commissar Lord there.
I do like how Pega is still trying to ninja cap even when it looks like he's going to win, because really you can never say for sure if you're going to win or not until the VPs are gone.
Definitely. We see another Carnifex coming out for Nerea, which, again, not very surprising. We're used to seeing that from him. We're probably going to continue seeing Carnifexes until Pega ends this game. But we see a great move here from Pega. We're seeing Ogryns being trained for Pega. I think this is actually a great move. We saw last time just how effective the Commissar Lord's Power Fist was. The Commissar Lord's Power Fist, I think, combined together with the Ogryn, is going to be just too much for any Thornback Carnifex that is going to try its luck against Pega at this point in the game.
Indeed, the Hand of Tasker is very mighty.
I love Relic.
Power Fist of Tasker is, for those who don't know, Tasker is, I believe, the lead balance designer in Dawn of War 2. He's been around since vanilla. And
actually, I'm not sure if he's been around since vanilla, or, well, maybe not the original production. I couldn't find his name in the credits, actually, when I went through it again. But he definitely was all over Chaos Rising.
I remember him way before Eternal War, too. Though, he was one of the guys in the X-Fire chat way back when.
Yeah. Solo Sina on the left side of the, left side of BP here. I had one little thing I didn't quite like about what Pega did there, although I'm not sure if the crush from the Carnifex may have did it, so it may not actually have been Pega. But he had the booby traps set by that victory point, and he blew them on the Carnifex, which actually booby traps do decent damage to vehicles, but typically you won't only use them on lighter vehicles with like less health. Because when you use it on the card effects, it just has so much health that it's like, lol, what was that? He should have just preserved them for the capping squad that inevitably had to come, because card effects can't cap anything. The Venom Brew that came up after it is the only thing that can cap. So he, in my opinion, he should have preserved them for that. But again, I'm not 100% sure the card effects didn't like run them over, and like that its crush didn't auto trigger them.
I believe Crush does auto trigger that, but I could be wrong.
I know some things it does, but I'm not.
It could have been just it triggered by itself. I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, I know like Angry Bits. Now I'm angry. Like that will trigger a lot of stuff, but that's like a slightly different kind of crush because it's got the little like make kablam and ground thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I believe that concludes it for our show, unless we have other wrapping up comments.
No, not too much. You know, we wanted to focus on Requisition. I think we covered that quite well. You know, the point of this game, as far as Requisition goes, was, you know, I felt like Pega, basically, he won this game through micro, and you saw that, like, constantly his income was worse than Nerea's, like, by a significant amount of times, like, by more than twice as much for a significant portion of the game, and basically, Pega just buckled down and he said, alright, I'm going to hold this area. I'm going to make Nerea pay for anything he tries to do in this area. Nerea can go around and ninja cap all he wants, but the second that he can't ninja cap anymore, the second that I get an opening, I'm going to go and do my own, you know, capping. I'm going to go ahead and take, you know, points for myself then. I'm going to take what's given to me then and, you know, not challenge Nerea too much on that front, because I know that I can't win that against a Tyranid player, especially Lictor Alpha Tyranid, because the thing that gives Tyranids a slight edge as far as the capping goes is that Hormagaunts and Termagant stuff all have much faster starting movement speeds than like Imperial Guard, right? So like they're speed 5. The one nice thing is Commissar Lord is like speed 5.5, so a little bit of a bonus for Imperial Guard there, but otherwise, you know, the Guardsmen, even though they're running around trying to back cap too, they aren't a very fast squad. So, you know, they're not quite as effective with that as like Adrenal Gland. Hormagaunts at 6.5 speed. I believe it's 6.5. So, you know, it's very tough to compete with that. And also, when you have the Lictor Alpha who can infiltrate and Flesh Hook and kind of, you know, be really nice and self-sustaining. And especially once he gets Deadly Leap on this map, it allows him quite a bit of mobility as well. You know, so I feel like Pega just did a great job. You know, he kind of showed how you can win economically, right? Because he's still... It was economic, right? I mean, he inflicted so much economic damage on Nerea, but it was through combat, mostly. Not necessarily through other economic means. And again, this is because Dawn of War 2's economy is completely tied back into your performance. So, you know, again, there, you know, kind of to sum up, like, what you can do on, you know, capturing requisition points, always good. Decapping enemy requisition points, always good. Killing enemy units, always good, right? You can't go wrong there. Those are the key things. I mean, everything else is kind of like, it's really good to know about it, but it's not necessarily something that you need to actively be doing in the game. It's just something that you should be aware of. And it, you know, again, it's kind of one of those things we want to make people aware of too, because we constantly hear comparisons of Dawn of War 2 to this game and that game, and Dawn of War 2 has no macro and this and that, and you know, when you're trying to analyze why you won or why you lost, that's when it becomes really helpful to really go in and understand upkeep, and to really go in and understand all the relationships that all of these things have on each other. So that's really what we're getting at for that kind of detail there. When you're playing, it's kind of less that you need to be concerned with those. So don't get too overwhelmed immediately. Work your way into it. And, you know, again, if you guys have anything, you know, any kind of questions on that stuff, you guys want us to do a follow-up on this kind of thing, let us know. We've got threads out, like I said, on Game Replays and iCup, in the iCup community forums, and in the Game Replays Dawn of War 2 general discussion. So hit us up there. Send me an email, 5*general@gmail.com. You actually have to spell out asterisk. Gmail won't let me use the actual asterisk. Cry, pout. But yeah, so that is about it. I think Lokgar had to step out, so I'm gonna say goodbye for the both of us. This is 5-Star General, aka Tearing Up 16, signing off. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow.